I'm Justin, out here doing some fishing on the kayak, and I thought I'd take a little break and share my favorite baits for the month of October. You know, October, we've made it through those nasty hot summer dog days in August. Water's starting to cool off and the fish are starting to bite. They're starting to get really keyed on bait fish this time of year. They start to feed up heavy, and you know, this month and next month leading up to when we start getting cold and they start going deep for the winter, they are putting on pounds, they are feeding. So one of my favorite baits for the month, spinnerbait. And I got a couple different types. Probably my favorite is a double willow, and pretty much any sort of shade of white is gonna be good. You might go a little more translucent and clearer water, but they're keyed on bait fish. That shade of white is gonna be good. And a double willow, you know, that willow, that long teardrop shaped blade is going to put off a lot of flash. It doesn't have quite as much resistance as some of the other blade types I'll show you in a minute. So you can reel it a little faster, you can stop it and start it, and that flashing, that white, it just screams bait fish, and you can catch a lot of fish in the month of October on a spinnerbait. Now the other blade types, for in case you've never thrown a spinnerbait before, a Colorado blade is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum from that willow leaf, and it's just a circular blade. Now when that spins, it's still going to have some flash, but it's going to put off a tremendous amount of vibration and thump. Those fish will feel that more with their lateral line. So I like to go with this type of spinnerbait more if you've got some dirtier water. Again, white, you can't go wrong with white, but if you've got a little bit dirtier water, maybe the fish can't see quite as far, they will pick up that vibration from that big Colorado blade. And then sort of a tandem in between is a willow leaf blade and then a little kicker blade that's a Colorado. Now that's going to give the bait a little more lift. It's not going to cut through the water quite as easily as if you had two of those willow leaf blades on there, but it's kind of a nice in between. It'll put off some thump, you'll still have some flash. All three of these baits are going to be great choices for the month of October. My second choice is going to be kind of along the same lines, something that's imitating a bait fish, but at topwater. October can be a great time for topwater, and these buzz baits, these are actually ones that I made. Maybe I'll go into more detail about that one day. But these baits, they stay on the surface. They will sink if you don't reel them, but as you reel them, that blade, the little cups on here, will catch the water on the surface, and as long as you keep a fairly moderate to fast retrieve, that's going to spin along the surface kind of like an egg beater. And if you get one and sort of break it in right, I really like ones that squeak. If you can get them to squeak, I really like that sound. I think it helps me get more bites. But essentially, I think what we're imitating with something like this is a bait fish that's on the surface, that's an easy meal, and you can catch some big fish. I like white, I like black, they both work. You know, I've got these little frog trailers on these. I've gotten big into the frog trailers lately. I have thrown and caught a lot of fish on skirted buzz baits, but I've noticed that the fish tend to get the bait better. I don't miss as many fish. I don't have them come up and slap at the skirt as much when I have these frog type trailers on. They come up and they tend to eat it and engulf it pretty well. A quick buzzbait tip, blade size can make a difference. So especially if you're gonna make your own, you can go to some place like Lure Parts online, and I think there are a couple other places where you can buy, you know, blades in different sizes. You can buy heads, you know, basically it's the jig head with the hook and the wire. You can buy the little beads, and again, different sizes, so you can kind of mix and match. You can get different gauges of wire. But what I like to do is get a bigger blade than is recommended for that size bait. So like if you get a 1/4 ounce head is what I like to throw a lot, and I'll get a big blade. That big blade, you'll be able to retrieve it more slowly. So when the water starts to really cool off towards the end of the month and those fish might not be as aggressive, you can just crawl this on the surface and you'll still get bit. All right, so there's the first two. Third, I'm gonna go with another topwater bait, a frog, and I'll kind of mix in frogs and toads. These topwater toads, especially for places like tidal rivers like the Potomac where you've got a lot of grass, or even some of your lakes that have vegetation, these can be really good. You're retrieving it over the top of it. Now this particular bait will actually float when you stop it. So you can reel it, the legs will kick. It's a similar kind of action to a buzzbait, but you can stop it. And the great thing about this, a buzzbait around grass, this blade is gonna spin, you're gonna get grass wrapped up around the wire, and it's just not gonna work right. But these frog style baits, or a toad in this case, is gonna come through that really well. The other option, when it starts to cool off in the fall especially, and sometimes when you'll have matted vegetation on the surface, and a lot of times that mat on the surface, the fish will feel, I don't know if they feel safe or protected. The birds can't see them, but it's also warm sometimes. When the rest of the lake is starting to cool off, that grass will retain heat from the sun, and you can throw a bait that will sit in the grass and just slowly edge it along and get some vicious blow-ups through that grass. So either one of these, frog style bait, hollow body frog, or toad, those are both going to be great in October. Last but not least, crankbaits. Again, the fish are keying on bait fish. So I don't have a whole bunch of white style crankbaits with me today. I'm out fishing for smallmouth and imitating crawfish mostly, but there's a bunch of different brands of crankbaits that are good. These fatter style ones, 1.5 series, this is a top selling crankbait. It's caught a ton of fish for me. Again, I like white colors primarily this time of year. We're into the fall. But that crankbait's going to deflect off cover really well. It's great around rock and it's great around wood. Lay down trees, you can throw that in it, reel it down the tree. That bill bounces off the limbs and it draws strikes from fish that might not hit otherwise. This Spro crankbait is another neat one. These thinner style baits have gotten popular the last few years. It's still got that same bill to deflect off cover, but you're gonna have a little bit different vibration. And sometimes when you're fishing pressured fish, that little change in vibration can make a big difference. So that if the fish are seeing a ton of this style crankbait, it might be a good idea to switch up and throw something a little bit different. You can also play around with rattles. I've got some baits that have rattles. I've got some that have no rattles. And sometimes that does make a difference. I think the action is the big thing. That vibration and that banging, deflecting off the rocks and the wood is what really triggers the bites. But there are times when I've seen a difference where that loud one will spook fish and the silent one won't, or vice versa. That loud one, maybe in dirtier water, will help that fish find the bait when you're not getting bit as well on a silent one. So that's my top 4 baits for the month of October.